Welcome to welcome to our Juneteenth celebration. I'm your host, Dar Dwayne, and if you have read over or I should say, as we wait for everyone to filter in, I just want to quickly just sort of recap what this celebration and what this conversation is all about. The conversation is titled Juneteenth Conversations, Rhymes, Lyrics, and Rhythmic Dialogues, and we're going to be exploring the contributions of hip hop and how hip hop has played a relevant role in pretty much pushing the thought process of equality for African Americans. So with that, I just want to quickly acknowledge my panel. And once I introduce everyone on the panel, we're going to go ahead and segue into the next part of our program. So just quickly acknowledging two of our younger panelists. They are both college students. We have Devion Johnson, also known as DJ, who is currently at school at Rutgers. We have Samantha Joseph, who we affectionately call Sam, who is currently at school at NYU. And we have our moderator for the day. We have Purple Haze. Purple Haze is the director of hip hop education at NJPAC. I want to quickly just give you a brief background on who Purple Haze is for those who may be uninformed, and we'll move forward from there. So Purple Haze is a resident of Newark, New Jersey. Purple Haze connects with students intentionally through the powerful engagement and love for hip hop culture and community. Enthusiasts of the art form appreciate her energy, impeccable flow, and her clever deliverance of truth. Purple has mastered her own rich style of delivering lyrics and developing parallel teaching techniques, rapidly growing a reputation for being a lead contributor to hip hop education and cultural preservation. Purple's passionate about collectively bridging the art, culture, and education and wellness. With that, I guess we could say that this conversation is going to be really all about the culture. We talk about being about the culture, and I think that's the proper way to segue this conversation. We're going to be focused specifically on the culture and the impact that the culture has on our community at large. So to no further ado, Purple, it is all you. I do want to, before I pass the baton, let you all know the chat feature is open for all of you viewing from Zoom. So if you would like to drop in your comments or questions, you can answer in the chat format. If you're watching via Zoom, if you're watching via Facebook, we're going to ask that you leave the comments in the comment section, and those comments and questions will be filtered to us. So again, to no further ado, Purple, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. I'm grateful. I feel a range of human emotions at this period of time in our life. Um, and I know that I am fortunate to be on this call and in this moment with everyone who is there because there's opportunity with the breath. That's how I'm doing. What about you, DJ, Sam, Daryl? How you living? How you living? Right? How you doing? I find is sometimes a challenging question nowadays to answer it authentically. As hip hop is about authentic self-expression, how do we answer how you doing authentically? So that's an option. But I also like to say how you living. Shout out to the Wayans for making out one of our cultural fun time shows. How you living in living color.
Still a classic and a staple. So I guess Devion, how are you living? How you living?
I'm better than what I was a couple of weeks ago. I'm all right. Like, so COVID has been, I guess, detrimental to me. If we're gonna be authentic, as Purple mentioned, like for me specifically, like I lost a cousin to COVID, so ultimately it's just like honestly it kind of feels like I'm trapped, and it's like a lot of psychological things. It's a lot of it's just a lot of things going on in this world. Like the world is just up in flames. The world is just up in flames. But I keep sanity by listening to music, making music, and just keeping in contact with those that I love. So, and keeping my faith in God.
That's real. That's powerful. That's brave, and that's bold. Courageous to tell the truth, your truth. Speak it to power, and let people know how you're doing. Vulnerability really comes up in uncertain times. And for someone to say how they're feeling, how they're doing, and how they're living, I don't think it's important that we hear each other and we don't take it for granted. I also, one thing I will do on our call is play a little bit and drop some hip hop lyrics in, because there's ways, again, that movement, music accompanies all movement in our culture. And sometimes it is the music that pushes the movement. So art before life, life to art. But when you said I feel trapped, it reminded me of I believe it was late 80s song. It might be on Colors soundtrack, but literally is a song called Trap. And when he said, nah, you can't keep a good man down, they got me trapped. So that's very, very real. And again, the music really does communicate so much of one's journey. And then one can hear themselves in someone else's lyrical expression, which is evidence for our oneness, our unity, our UNITY. Shout out to the queen. Hey. Sam, how you doing? Speaking of queens, you got your crown on today. We got the head wraps. Head wraps been worn then, now. I'm curious about the head wrap in the future. Yes. You know, the head garb, right? So thank you for wearing that garb as we look at DJ's t-shirt. Also, Tupac has got the bandana on in the garb. Now it's definitely an option. So we got mask or we got bandanas. Shout out you know, but it's such a symbolic piece of that culturally, how we take care of ourselves and how we express ourselves through our presentation, our physical presentation, using what we have to create, which hip hop uses everything and anything to create. So shout out to your crown, your rap. How you living, queen?
I think that's a really good way to phrase it. I have been focused on self-care really in the past couple of weeks, considering everything that's been going on. And I'm going to be honest, because I mean, there's no other way to live, truthfully. It's been really hard. And it does take a toll on you. It truly does take a toll on you, because it's leading up to everything that's been happening. We were in a pandemic. Black people were proportionately dying, far more than everyone else, and people are not working. We're upset, and then police brutality breaks out, and everything just escalates from there. And I mean, I've been protesting, I've been calling out friends who haven't been speaking, I've been doing a lot, but also on the double side of that, it's tiring. And Black people are tired. Like, it's like, I'm sick and tired. Like, Fannie Lou Hamer, like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And one of the ways that I have been actually taking like self-care of myself is through art, through music, through watching shows like Insecure, things that are keeping me ingrained in like my self-worth as a Black person and making yourself feel seen and giving yourself that joy. And I had to wrap up the hair today because it's Juneteenth and y'all need to know what's going on. Like, it's a physical representation of like how to express your Blackness in the midst of everything that's going on, because you have no other choice but to feel joy, because the alternative is just, you can't.
Oh, in the words of Frankie Beverly and Mays, joy and pain is like sunshine and rain. Very real, man. Thank you for being as my man Kanye West album is titled, Beautifully Human. You know, all it comes with. And I say that as a statement, and Sam, what you said reminded me, right, is that this tiredness also comes from this not seen as human and the expectation of living, carrying so much, laboring in such a way to build a country without getting paid then, right? And then when they say, nah, no more, it's over, still the people in the West, because it is Juneteenth, the people in the West still kept working and laboring. People did not want to end that free labor opportunity to build this country and build this wealth. So some of the tire is the intergenerational trauma and the intergenerational, the pass downs of things from those times of what our ancestors did to persevere, and the resilience we have being mistaken as superhuman or not even human, by not thinking we're human, the application of pain and expectations being unrealistic, which is also on the flip side, the strength of the people and enormous strength, I would say even superpower. However, that's not what we want. That's not what we would choose. Right? We choose humanity, and we're asking and demanding to people to acknowledge themselves and start checking, check. So, in the words of my man Ice Cube, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Chickadee check. Das effects. shout out to the facts. And so when you said self-care, right? Audre Lorde said that's a revolutionary act. And self-care nowadays is definitely being provided by the arts and the artists. So I'm curious when you talked about Insecure, and I want to play a little bit, right? Because hip hop, we have classic films that were our go-to to watch, celebrate. We seen ourselves on film, and they dealt with the dichotomy of our lives. So there's certain things when we watch it, we know what we know what's being seen, right? And our some generations would have said, "Don't put our dirty laundry out there." Right? It's almost like code language is out there, but those who don't know our culture don't know that's what we talk about. Yet it's still observed, right? And it's interpreted. And I'm curious, one who is now newly watching this and they just got put on to Issa Rae, shout out to Black filmmakers, script writers, musicians, all art forms I want to highlight right now. The stars over there navigating that space to have images and truth to power there. So if someone's never watched Insecure, all right, what are they going to encounter?
Ooh, okay. If someone hasn't watched Insecure and they want to step into that world, I would first say that Insecure is a show that is at its center about a friendship between two Black women trying to figure out themselves in the world and where they stand. And that's in their relationships, that's in their career fields, that's in how society recognizes them. And it's wrapped up in a really funny comedy that's 30 minutes long on HBO. And I mean, I will say, like, I'm a huge fan of Issa Rae and what she does, especially when it comes to music, because she's so in tuned with LA and the music scene there, and making sure that she uplifts artists from that like local area, and like she does the Spotify playlist every week, and it's like it's phenomenal actually the way that she manages to cultivate Black joy, Black pain, and Black life in general while looping in music and art, and it's a beautiful thing. It's one of the hot take, it's very bold to say, but it's one of the shows I can say modernly that depict Black life really well, actually, for me, because it shows you everything. It shows you your family, your friends, how you feel on bad days, how you feel on good days. Like, these are all things that I didn't get to see growing up. Like, I can say that truthfully. Like, it's a very interesting like dichotomy, because I think about like, I mean, living single and like a different world. Like, I went and found these shows because there was a huge like disparity and gap for like Black life and Black stories for a while, until shows like Blackish and like Insecure came back into the scene. And I feel like we're in a very interesting spot and renaissance of like what this can mean for people seeing Black life. So that was a really long spiel, but I will say it's, I think we're in a good space and time, considering everything that's happening, to really portray what Black life means. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think it was powerful. I think it's necessary for you to take up all the space that you choose to. You're welcome and invited to do so. And I love that you highlighted there was a gap where we didn't have those television shows. We already had a minimalist amount of shows on anyway, right? Yeah. Yet and still, how I love that you kind of showed the generational experience from Insecure now to going back to living single, to going back to a different world, which let you know what before that was I mentioned in Living Color and the Cosby Show, and before that we had Good Times and the Jeffersons and the Facts of Life. I know the Facts of Life technically wasn't that show, but Tootie had so much in the joint. You know that we gonna put that one on the list too, if y'all don't mind. Put it in the chat. Tell me, does Facts of Life go on the list or not, for those who know that generational experience? Because who Tootie was the only brown girl on the show at a private school. Check that back again. And then even back, you got What's Happening, which was the question I started with. You know, how you living was Living Color, but what's happening? I'm sorry, not the question I started, but what's happening in the 70s show, which I have to pull up because we have the actual lockers, right? You brought up LA and the East and the West Coast communication and cultural exchange through television and through music, as well as visual art. And that show to me gives a shout out to the early hip hop culture, which also reminds me of Soul Train, because the lockers were on there and Rerun was official, right? That's official hip hop right there. Those movements were very real, and that language that got passed on. So I'm curious, and I want to ask you another question about language in a
Before you
moment.
before you jump into that, I just want to just quickly just chime in on the back
Yeah,
end of that insecure comment, because I
yeah.
think what you just said there in regards to authentically us and how important that is, and why insecure is so successful is because it is authentically us. I think in this one show, right, this is the first time, if you look at all of those shows we just listed, which I love and I grew up on as well, but I think this is the one show where people who look like us have hands in every part of the structuring of that show, even down to the writing. And we can see it because we see a reflective span of characters that touch on different socioeconomic levels, right? So we have Molly's character who has money, who's affluent, right? You have the Issa's character who sort of, I guess, fall in that middle class to I'm still trying to figure it out category, right? And I think that's imperative because oftentimes when we're depicted on TV, it's either one or the other, right? We're either one extreme, like the Cosbys, we were very wealthy and affluent, right? Or we are like uh, good times, right? Where we're living in the ghetto, right? So it's just like I feel like
And it's
this,
so extreme.
yeah. Why do we have to be?
A lot of
I
us
mean,
in the middle.
there's a spectrum, right? I'm like, there's a spectrum, and I feel like that more shows like this and the success of this show will hopefully propel us forward, especially marrying that idea of the culture. So she brings this music element, which is sort of what this context of this conversation is all about, and that music is sort of like the layering part of the story, right? It adds to the story, and it better defines or interprets the scenes or the scenarios we're watching play out on our screen. So I just really want to just chime in really quickly on that because I thought that was so dope to hear both of you all go back and forth on that specific point. And we have a shout out from from the chat as well. A lot of people are shouting out School Days, different
School
shows.
days.
So yeah, so definitely got to give Spike Lee a holla, a shout out because School
Yeah,
Days is a classic. Yes, but back to you, Purple. I just wanted
yeah,
to
I
chime
love
in.
it. I mean, I do feel like go ahead and put some things in the chat right now. Let's make our television list, and now we're going into the film list as well. We may as well. And fortunately, we have a lot more. But like again, that barometer, we still have some filling in the blanks about how life looks. Just regular. Oh, so I want to pull back a little bit on myself and take something that Sam said and move over to DJ, right? And DJ literally your initials, man. Your initials is where it all got started at hip hop. Okay, it starts with the DJ.
Yeah.
um, and so Sam talked about and Sam, tell me if this is recapping this accurately or not, or call me in if I do not. The music and Insecure is intentional. The music is local. The selection is regional and uplifts and amplifies and creates opportunities for artists. So not going to mainstream is pivotal and a collective approach. Putting somebody on, highlighting them, putting them right. It's good music in this stuff, right? And those shows that were listed, they all like we can think of the theme song. We can think of different songs that we were introduced to because of that episode, or if you play that song, you think of that episode. You know, it goes together. So DJ,
Yes.
we spoke about music in the film, and I want to ask you a little bit more about soundtracks. Look at that! Randomly, my technology just came on.
Hey, yo.
Shout out to Cameo. Word up! It was the song "Word Up." Everybody say when you hear the call, you got to get on the way. I have no idea. I'm not touching my phone, man. That's the ancestors right there. That's the ancestors. They got something to say.
They chiming in. They chiming in.
Chiming in. So DJ, when it comes to the soundtrack, can you talk about soundtracks and that if the screens were off and the soundtracks were on, what are the messages supposed to convey? What is that opportunity for a soundtrack to, and how important is it to create music intentionally or to pair music with visuals intentionally?
So for me personally, I am an artist, and I've been listening to music my entire life. I think when you create a soundtrack, like an album, right? Like with a studio album, for me personally, it's the storyline, it's the relatability, but it's also like the yin and yang theory, right? So you get an artist who, for example, Kendrick Lamar, which is why I love his music so much. It's that idea of knowing that an artist is good and an artist is evil. And I feel as though personally, like artists go through a lot. Like and it's crazy because we get put on a platform where everyone's looking at you and everyone's expecting you to do like the right thing. The right thing, Spike Lee, since we mentioned. Like everyone's expecting you to do the right thing. But it's like at the end of the day, you're still an artist and you're going through the same things that people in life are going through. But I also, what I think what's so special about artists and what's special about soundtracks is that we're able to communicate it in a way that people just love to receive. It's like we're able to expose the good parts of life, the great parts of life, but we're also we're not afraid to expose the evil and the dark sides. And those are the things that we have to pay attention to because that is what makes us human. And if you're able to put those things together and create a soundtrack and put it with the film, I love listening to albums while I'm watching movies. And certain albums kind of go along with the movie in terms of the subject matter. So I don't know. I forgot what movie I was watching. I like you get to a point where you watch, at least in quarantine, you watch so many movies and you listen to so much music, you can't remember what you're listening to, but you know what you're listening to. But
it's in there.
it's that's how I feel about it. And speaking of insecure, like so I made this bar. I said sometimes I'm insecure and I have a lack of patience. My world is closing in and I'm losing inspiration. Getting on my knees every day to pray to God, help me fight through all this damn temptation. Because it's like that's the world we're living in right now. I mean, it's like COVID didn't just show us that there is a virus that's killing people. COVID showed us everyone's true colors. And it's now what I feel as though in terms of music wise, I feel as though this is the perfect time to really work on your craft and understand what are things that you don't like about yourself. Going back to self-care, what Sam mentioned, things that you necessarily want to improve upon, things that you're good at, that you want to be great at, that you want to be exceptional at. And I don't know, I listen to Kendrick and I just feel like I'm in competition with him. Like, I just listen to him like, Dan, if he was in a room right now, I got a Kendrick poster. If he was in a room right now and I had to rap this, like, would I be proud about what I had to say? And I don't know, and you know, you get to a certain level, like this is how deep music is. This is how deep it is. Like when you really care about the art. I get to a point where I'm like, yo, I don't even rap for Kendrick. I rap for God. Like if I was to see him right now and I was to lay this bar down, would he look at me and say, yo, that is the most phenomenal thing I've ever heard?
See, now I hear you talking about the power, the purpose, and intention, right? And when it comes to hip hop culture, because it's been mass produced by the industry, which has a different purpose and goal, right? Yeah. Industry is about product, selling, and that's not what culture is about. So this conversation right now is in context of hip hop culture. And what I hear you saying is, number one, allowing myself to be a vessel, still enough to listen and hear, brave enough to write the truth and discover myself, because hip hop is about the number one thing we're practicing is knowledge of self. And so getting to know self, which will have you evolve to recognizing self in all and the power again of the oneness, right? But having individual contribution, discovery, then creating art that is for the masses that you share out, or not the masses that you share out, because you may share with one and make the difference for that one, and that one makes a difference for another, right? When your name DJ and you're talking about the responsibility of what we identify in hip hop culture as the MC. We were not called rappers, we were MCs. And that responsibility came to us from Black Power movement, civil rights movement, right? Also the messaging in music, or the messaging could be melody, the messaging could be word, the chain gang, the gospel, Negro spirituals, all of these, the blues, hip hop got our little recruits from all of these genres. But what I hear you talking about is the blues of the artists, right? Which evolved to country music. So shout out to the song that last year, whether we wanted to hear it or not, it rocked, right? Because literally the line of them all was, can't nobody tell me nothing.
And that's what I mean.
That's how we felt. And that brother said it had everybody wanting to feel that, everybody acknowledging that level of power. And we want to access it more often in a system that says we're not powerful at all. Right? So, what you was about to say, DJ?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I feel as though that we're disenfranchised. You feel me? It's like, all right, so for me personally, I've always been rapping, right? And I've always listened to rap music. My dad was like, he always played pop. Like, he always played pop. And I never really understood him. Like, I never really understood pop. You know, I understood the mainstream songs, but actually listening to him, right? To live and die in LA, right? It's the industry that it gets a little complicated in terms of industry and craft. I mean, you get people who sell themselves for the industry, but it's like, can you really blame them? Can you really blame them? Because it's like, what do you tell somebody that's used to seeing someone struggle? It's like, what do you tell that person? Like, all right, so now that you're in college and you're going to take out all of these loans for that degree that's not going to do anything for you, and then pay all of it back at that job that you hate. It's like, what do you really say to someone like that after coming from an environment where it's like gangbangers in the front yard, being shooting in the back house, writing raps in your bedroom? Yeah, I'm living in a trap house. What do you really say to someone like that? It's like you put a generation of people in a position and you give them an ultimatum. Either you take this high road and then you hope for the best when you get there, or you can just go the easy route. And it's like you find yourself wanting to choose that easy route, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. You feel like that's what you have to do. And that's why you get, I don't put any artist down. Like, your art is your art at the end of the day.
Right.
But you get a lot of artists who just make songs and just put them out there. And don't get me wrong, I love listening to, like, something ignorant. Like Kanye was like, I gotta apologize to Most Kweli. Like, is it cool to rap about gold if I told the world I copped it from Ghana and Mali? Like, it's just like he taps into himself and he understands the goods and the bads of things. I think the industry is definitely saturated. It's definitely for $1. But I personally feel as though that if you know what you're good at, if you know that you're an artist, if you're an MC, you have to be able to, 1, recognize that, 2, stay true to the art, and 3, you got to be able to put $1 on that. I've been studying Jay-Z like this past, like, this entire quarantine.
It's important.
It's important. It's really important.
This is now important to read. And I got to tell you, I heard several people outside of my generation say he's old. Who care about that?
What?
Right? And so not everybody knows the evolution of Jay-Z, from the Big Pimpin' to the 4-4. Right? It's a really great interview with New York Times where he's talking about his evolution. I still want the brother, I'll say it here, I still want the brother to grow in his accountability of how do you restore your neighborhood. And that's, he literally is one of the examples of where one goes into the industry, learns, gets levels of resource, and accesses like levels of philanthropy and sponsorship and creating, right? Same thing with Diddy and some of the big millionaires, same thing, right? Now they're in the millionaire, billionaire, and they have a whole nother level of conflict, right? On that capitalist self-indulgence and the elevating my community. at simultaneously taking care of me and mine. I know they talk about generational wealth. So generational wealth from one track, and then there's expansive community generational wealth. Examples: Black Wall Street and the Buy in Black, or the example Issa Rae, the rocking with the less known names around the way, right? And so platforms to elevate each other and our work, and they you know, there's going to be more they learn. So they each have created platforms. So Tidal and Revolt TV. And I got to shout out Dame Dash.
Yeah, man. Like,
he's doing it his way. He's very much doing it his way. The same thing with Dr. Dre coming through and with beats. And so they're learning in capitalist systems that has always exploited Black music, has never been the artist win. Shout out to Prince. You know, when he put slave on his name, it was very much a communication. The battles for intellectual property and ownership of what is ours. And we don't, in hip hop, we have not given as much credit. What's called street art today is graffiti then, which was a culture before hip hop, honestly. Even the fact that we have the writing on our shirt, this is what we were doing. We were painting on our clothes using what we had. To create and to express messaging, and then the fashion industry acknowledged that as working and created branding, right? And so giving credit to where it's due, returning the source and acknowledging where you got it from is important right here. I want to, we're a vast dynamic group, so we could be on here for 40 days.
Can I quickly chime in on the back end of that comment? So there was a dialogue between you and DJ that spoke to tapping into power, right? So tapping into power, and the idea that the current hip hop, the current state of hip hop, and the artists that are represented in this current state, looking to artists from the past, and how those artists from the past were, you know, using or exerting their gift to be the voice of power in their timeline because they didn't feel like they had a voice that they could connect with. So I'm looking at the chat because I want to make sure that we keep our viewers engaged and involved. And someone in our conversation or in the Q&A added referencing the Black Panther soundtrack, since you were talking about Kendrick and tapping into power and how the movie itself, like I'm wearing the Black Panther t-shirt, go figure, but the movie itself, how that movie brought about a unity within the culture of people of color. But then not only did the movie bring us together in a way that I don't think we've seen as far as a film is in the context of a film, but also speaking to the music that went behind the film, that also powered the film, that drove the film, and the artists that were selected to help bring about the vision or execute this vision of unity. And what does that look like? If we're talking Afrofuturism, right? We touched on that a little earlier. How would a futuristic space like like Wakanda be depicted, right? And how would tapping into the real power, how would we visually translate that? So I guess one of our, like I said, viewers brought it up. So I just want to know if you want to like expound upon that, sort of dig more into the conversation about that.
Yes, let's talk about it. Let's talk about that Black Panther soundtrack and start moving into Afrofuturistic realism, realizations coming soon, right? And I definitely have also a question about the soundtrack, but also the movie. How did we know? How did word get out to wear Wakanda's celebratory garb? Right? Because it is Juneteenth. We're talking about messaging. How did we know to show up with something to show pride, a connection, and that we were in Wakanda when we went to see the joint? Right? So let's talk about the movement and the music starting right there. Shout out to Kendrick Lamar, the first hip hop artist to win a Pulitzer Prize, and because we are literary giants, we have been, and we have now offered another form of literature called rap lyrics. So Sam, I see your hand go up about this. Let's one time.
Okay, when Black Panther had come out, I was still in high school, and I remember truly the phenomenon around the idea that Disney took on this all-Black film, number one, set in a place that is technically not real, but we know it can be. And on top of that, I was also taking a class at the time about like the soundtrack of revolution and like how music and artists literally are always at the root of every revolution. Fight your mama. You can talk about it later. It's the truth. And I wrote about how like the Black Panther album is probably one of the most important like soundtracks that I've heard in a long time, really, because number one, to bring up DJ's point, it tells a story. Number one, it tells a story of literally the characters like T'Challa, Killmonger going through this issue of like, we don't connect but we do connect, and I feel like you left me out but I'm here. And like then you have all of these artists from like Africa, you have artists come in, you have SOB on Pandemic, you have all these different artists come in and put their own influence on this soundtrack, and it's revolutionary. Like, I mean, some of these songs are solely for the understanding that this is my life, this is my story. I have a right to be angry, I have a right to grieve, I have a right to feel something, I have a right to like pull up and feel good. Like, we can bring Jay-Z back into this. I feel like coming from where Jay-Z came from and to where he got, I mean, it's phenomenal when you really sit and think about it, because everything is stacked against us in so many different ways and so many different levels, and it's on all levels. So when you sit and think about this soundtrack and what it did, and the film visually, where the music is like scoring, it's literally phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. It literally did what Hollywood wants as far as the box office numbers go, right?
Right.
Soundtrack. But for us, it was symbolic, right? We weren't paying attention to that part, right? So what is it that had us celebrate? I was in Thailand when the joint came out, and it was showing in Thailand sold out. You know, this was a world phenomenon, right? I personally was like, yeah, what? It reminds me of Kendrick's DNA.
Yeah.
What happened to the like human DNA around the world? It's almost like we were a tree, you know, a tree that's been here for 2,000 years. So it has roots that's way deep and far and long and connected. Like, what happened around the world when that was released, DJ?
Yo,
how did that happen? What did it speak to? What happened to us? Something big opened up. And I'm bringing that up right now because what we're facing, and I want to know what happened. I want to know, is that in us right now while we go through the opposite? Demonstrating powers of blackness.
That's a hefty question. It's hefty because it's deep. It's like Kendrick created something that was, you were playing the instrumental and I just felt like getting up and just wilding. Like, I think what ended up happening was this, from my perspective. When the Black Panther film came out, what we got to see was the world of an African-American male and the world of an African, right? So this is an interesting concept. So you got one side that's like, yo, you got all these resources and you ain't even helping us. We're suffering right now. We hungry. We want to eat too. You guys are eating and we're not eating. We're in a no man's land. But then you have another side that's like, we don't want to quite give you our resources because you're not us. And that right there is why you get gangs, right, fighting each other. And it kind of like all roots back to that concept. And ultimately, what I loved about the Black Panther film, at the very end, T'Challa says, it was to the UN, says, I learned that building bridges is way better than building walls. And I feel it's like towards the soundtrack of the album, what we got was one of my favorite songs on there is Seasons. It's Seasons. And I love that song. I never really understand the lyrics, but I love the song because after studying it, what you get is the perspective of one man who's for me, someone that's here in America and they're suffering in their way. Then you get a perspective of someone else that's from the homeland and they're suffering in their way. And then you just clash it together. And what makes it so powerful is that there is no difference. It's just two different locations. And I don't know. I think the fact that the album, the soundtrack was created like that, along with the movie, it's powerful. It's powerful. And
speaking of that, right? Shout out to SZA, New Jersey local.
yo,
Been up for the sister SZA on that. That just did it.
Control.
The sky is vast, the stars, there's enough stars up there. We all got a light, and we all live in the dark, or with some dark. You made us, you said something that I heard as a lyricist, Sam, revolutionary music.
Yeah.
So I want to bring it to current day before we even get to Wakanda again. But in current day, I've noticed, right? Like I'm watching, and I don't watch a lot of news, right? I'm low key on social media. I'm definitely still, right now, what my contemplation is the revolution that will not be televised. Shout out to Last Poets and Jill Scott Heron. So I'm trying to figure out how do we use, right, our communication, right? Or how do we communicate right now, whether it be Green Book, village life right there, who's in your, who are the people in your neighborhood, like how do we move these messages now? And I'm super curious. I think I over-explained and forgot my question right there, but it was about revolutionary music. This is what I observed. DJ, you said it earlier. Pop Smoke, lyrically, voice.
His voice is great.
And movement. I wanted to see Pop Smoke evolve.
Yeah.
I wanted to see where Pop Smoke was going to grow because he had a talent and some gift, right? I wonder, was he going to go pop route? How was he going to do it? Because sometimes we might get the attention and, the industry asks you to do this and they'll fund that. And then you could juke him a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So
happens all the time.
I'm curious because I seen demonstration of protesters were rocking the Pop Smoke, and I asked my peoples to explain it. And I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this right here, right? But I'll say this piece. What is the protest music of today? From your generation to generation, because we have self-destruction. Shout out to D Nice. People now know D Nice is a DJ. D Nice is also an MC. D Nice is a beatboxer with the group Boogie Down Productions. The song Self-Destruction was made. NWA, we're all in the same game. We had tons of music, like you said, on everybody's album. It was the love song, the I need love, or I don't like you. You don't like me. My mom's song, my family, where I come from, what I imagine I'm going to do with all that money. Full-length albums to show you this person's imagination and reality if you can listen and unpack it. But right now, when it comes to revolutionary music, and I seen that, I said, yo, do they have music for their protests? Rhythmically, absolutely, right? And that's what that said to me, right? It's something to keep you energized, right? That's the sound of the man working on the chain. That rhythm is what have people keep working. And the frequency by using voice is sound, words are sound. So there's frequency when we speak and we use our voice. So those things carried our ancestors or were utilized as resources because it came from within. And, shout out to the beatboxers. You are an instrument. Your voice is an instrument. And so I said, yo, we can't knock the music that's made, and we don't know the music right now that's protest music. So what's the protest music?
Purple, I'm gonna jump in real quick. Just be mindful of the volume on your music because some of our comments they're saying some great points, but they can't hear you over the music. Yeah, no worries. But I think they miss some of the portion about the idea of protest music. So for those who may have missed the point of reference, what are the protest music, or what is the protest music of today? And I'll pitch it back to you. I believe you're about to ask the panelists that.
And let's put it in the chat. I'm asking the panelists, but let's put it in the chat. With some of the protest songs that would carry the movement of the day. I mean, really speaks to the anger, the frustration, the you go and learn, I'm not teaching you, the acknowledge, interrupt, the call in, the call out, the blackouts, like the fact that there are agendas and policies already prepared because they were organizers continuing to organize. So, the Grandmaster Flash, their demonstration with the message was what else was possible with music. So shout out to the Sugar Hill Gang and the celebratory, energizing, unifying song that the music industry put out first when it came to hip hop culture. But But then when Grandmaster Flash, again, acknowledging those who came before them, so they had the imagery of your and the skill set of your funk bands that came before them, so they understood the wardrobe and the entertainment element on stage. But when Melly Mel dropped the message, that right there was journalism, that was reporting, broken glass everywhere, right? And it literally, that chorus, listen to it again, speaks to today. It's like a jungle sometime, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. That person is talking about where they are in their mental health and well-being. So what music right now can carry and speak to this, our protest, our demonstration of today? It might not be in the messaging. I will say that. It's not in the messaging. Y'all the generation that grew up listening to Pac, and Pac had both, right? Biggie.
In our chat, we have a couple of people mentioning "Fight the Power." One is one of the main protest songs. We got Kendrick Lamar's "All Right," which I would have to totally co-sign. Like when Obama got into office, I think that song was blasted from every car that I heard driving from the poll that day. And just being able to vote in that election was such a phenomenal thing. So definitely,
my life, Lamar. I had to fight. Shout out, he literally flipped the color purple Oprah line. I had to fight my man, my daddies. I had to fight my uncles, right? We have a way of passing on information through generations in a form called sampling.
Yeah.
Sampling is just continuing to keep something alive and going for another generation. We extend the lifespan of things by doing that. Yes, it may be somebody else's original works, just the same way people taking our original works, but that's a different day's conversation.
We also have Keisha Slaughter in our comments who references the Crumpers. The Crumpers, we think about the West Coast and how is that also contextualized as a form of protest, right?
Thank you.
Because
it's
an emotional or driven movement that derives from a very raw space.
Yes, similar to warriors preparing to dance. I mean, preparing to go fight, actually have movement and rhythm in it.
Agreed.
So what, in some of those songs, all right, I would say from all right to current day, can you put me, D, on the songs that would be protest music? I seen them pop in the eye and Pop Smoke. I was like, oh, all right.
Pop was I didn't even like Pop Smoke at first because I was just like the welcome to the party. I was just like, like
talking about hitting on women. He talking about things that contribute to what our community no longer needs to do.
Yeah. The only song that drew me into him was PTSD because he sounded like 50. He sounded like 50 Cent. So I was like, oh, all right. So I guess he does have like a little bit of lyrics, but he's just playing it by this industry. It's sad that his life was taken away. Shout out to the Wu. But they got mad love for Pop Smoke in New York. They got mad love. Pop was different. He was.
You can't deny skill and talent. You know what I mean? Guidance and evolution happens and information happens. I'm not sure who his teachers were to know what to hold him accountable for, you know?
He was so from my perspective, the only artist I've honestly just been tapped into is Kendrick and this To Pimp a Butterfly album.
Okay, talk about that.
Well, to your point, for Pop, I think that he knew how to use his voice. His voice is just very distinctive. It's just like what's good. Like what's up? I'm down with all of it. Like it's just I loved it. It was just like all right, like I like it. And he had a sound. He knew what his sound was, and he was able to elevate himself. That was a 7-track EP. That wasn't a studio album. It's a difference. That was an EP. He blew up off of a project, basically. Like it's amazing. It's amazing. But
I ain't gotta give you all, and we're so abundant.
Yes.
So abundant. We are enough. And 7 songs are enough.
7 is a very important number.
It's divine. Right. Here goes and hip hop mathematics was intentional. You brought up Wu-Tang being one of the few, right? So the martial arts movies coming on Saturday. So the early hip hop pioneers watching martial arts Saturday mornings, which really informed breaking and acrobatics without teachers. By the way, hip hop is a self-taught. I know I'm a director of a hip hop education program. It's a self-taught cultural practice where as teachers, our role is to guide you for your self discovery, not teach you how to be us.
Exactly.
And you was about to say something.
I was just going to drop in really quickly from our Facebook comments. Adore Day was recommended as a current protest songs. I Will Rise Up. So I think too, hollering or thinking about the R&B voices, in this
Yes.
complex conversation and where they fit in, along with someone Keisha Slaughter brought up the female rappers from the '90s, how they used to unify and come together. That's an element we're low key missing in this time. To where we know we had Queen Latifah and MC Light come together on the track and they were rapping or speaking truth to power.
Oh
But
my
I want to get back to Sam because we technically only got like 5 to 4 minutes left, and I
gosh.
want to make sure we get her comment in.
I just wanna point out that like when I think about protest music and how it's been like the evolution of it happening from like we shall overcome and songs like that where they stem in gospel and they stem from the roots of how we connected as a people to then you have like don't push me because I'm close to the edge, like you already know that I'm upset. And then you come into now where we're in a bit, I don't want to say hiatus, I think we're just in the midst of the culture being created right now. I don't know for per se what the next big protest song that's going to unite us all together, but yes, all right comes to my head. But also when I think about Pop Smoke, when I think about Megan the Stallion, when I think about all these rappers who are like unapologetically themselves, that is revolution within of itself. Like that's the most important thing, because Pop Smoke was like, yep, roll another one, I'm gonna tell you how I feel, it is what it is. Megan the Stallion is going to be very up close and personal with how she feels. And there are even like intersectionalities in between like how Pop Smoke was received in the industry versus Megan Thee Stallion. Megan Thee Stallion was faced with a lot of pushback for her being honest about being open and her sexuality and being aware, and like that comes from Queen Latifah, that comes from Trina, that comes from Little Kim, that comes from women who were like, I'm going to be as honest and open about myself, and that is, in a sense, a way of a revolution. That's what I wanted to point out.
It's the liberating one choosing to liberate their voice, and again, be authentic.
Yep.
Be authentic. And so, thank you for that. So, the revolution, what I hear and what you're saying, Sam, is saying so, and not considering what people think, and definitely is not going to be your auntie, your mother, your parents' music. Every generation doesn't, snares and looks at the young people's music, as what is that? What is that? As my man Cool V, DJ Cool V, shout out Cool V and the legendary Juice Crew, the first crew in hip hop. But as my man Cool V always says, don't bash what young people are doing. When it comes to knowledge of self, right? Life is a full length mirror. But if hip hop is the voice of the youth, and we bash what young people are doing and saying, how do we have an opportunity for exchange? Mm. So what does respect look like? One of the number one values in hip hop is respect. Respect yourself, respect others. We can respect differences. I don't have to agree with you to hear you and listen to you. So if Pop Smoke is what it is for the day, if Meg the Stallion is what it is, and you can't tell me it's not, right? Because all of this is being written and is documented. But when you look back, the Savage Challenge did what it did. And I'm definitely not someone that likes the word savage and how it took on a part of the culture. It was also paired right before it was death culture and so much hip hop music. But I think what we needed to hear is these were people talking about their crying out maybe for skills around coping and management with life, right? And now we're getting a lot of self-care lists. Now we're getting that. So it might be that you need to put on something to crunk, or you might need to put on something to move, because it is in our DNA for movement. We need to move things through our body and in our body right there. So
and I just want to
about 2 more minutes.
Yeah, and before we close out on that note, I just want to just go to that thought process of growth, right? Sam mentioned it, you mentioned it a little bit about the idea of us and the music in the space we're in right now, not necessarily knowing where we're at right now. And I feel like with that, we're going through a growth period. And I feel like with most growth periods, like people think growth is supposed to be this beautiful, angelic thing. And with the beauty and angelic parts that come with growth, growth is also painful. A growth spurt does not feel great when you're going through it. But when you make it through to the other side is when you can reflect in the beauty of that growth. So I feel like as we see music sort of shape or take form now, as you highlighted your Megan Thee Stallions and your Pop Smokes, I feel like with them being their most authentic selves in this growth, right? They're sort of navigating how can I be my most authentic self without feeling like I have to answer to a call that people prior to me have done. How can I be me without having to conform to what society is saying I should be doing or how I should be supporting the culture simply because I am an attribute of the culture. And I think that's really important and that's relevant. It also ties into like where we have in our comment section where one of the viewers shouted out Macklemore's song "Love" and had questions about. Well, I'm not sure if it's a protest song, but the lyrical content of the song speaks to them, right? And I think that that's important. That everybody's idea of mourning, everybody's idea of growth looks different. Some people, when they're mourning someone or mourning a loss or shedding dead skin, that mourning process may look like anger, might look like throwing glasses across the room, or it may look like crying and just being still and being in a space where you can reflect. So I think we have to give room, right, to people who to digest and to move and to grow and to mourn in the way that they need so that we can have that Black Panther moment come back full circle so that we can see the unity that we saw in that film. We see it now in the streets, in the protests, and everybody moving together in Black Lives Matter. We see the parallel. That same level of being involved and that same level of being engaged is happening right now, like we saw for that film. It's just being reflected or I should say deflected a little differently in how it's being maybe presented via the media outlets that are relaying that.
Because again, well, hip hop is about participation, not observation. So those who are observing our culture and documenting our culture have what they say, but the story goes on how the storyteller tells it. And as we are authors in our creations, I would like to remind everybody to create your most authentic art as a way of self-preservation, documentation for the future. It's a time capsule. We're gonna have the best art, music come out of this time because of what it is pulling us for and to do, and what we the legacy upon which we stand on, which has been greatness. And like hip hop says, can't stop, won't stop. Shout out to Puff for giving us that one as well. And like Cardi B said, it's getting real. So and I say that with laughter because as a people, we do cope with comedy. We laugh, we cry, we sing, we dance, we create with what we have. So remember, turn within. Your knowledge of self is sourceful, and remember what's inside your DNA.
Thank you so much for joining us, Purple. I just want to say shout out to NJ Pack, shout out to Purple for being the moderator for this dialogue today and celebrating our culture and celebrating the music that is produced from our culture. Thank you, Samantha, for joining us. We wish you the best when you return back to school at NYU. Thank you as well, Davion, for joining us as well. We wish you the best at Rutgers. And for all of you who are watching from home, we encourage you to join us later tonight. We have our happy hour segment that will drop in our comment section. If you want to click that link, you can click that link. You can join us for cocktails later tonight. It'll be a little, Juneteenth, it is a celebration. So by all means, let's celebrate tonight. Pull up. I'll be your host for that. I'll be moderating that conversation. We're going to be focused on art. We have a playlist that's out of this world. It's on Spotify right now. That playlist can be found on our website under that link when you register. Click the playlist, listen to the jams, get you a cocktail, pull up. We're going to talk art and science. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we hope and we do encourage you to continue to check out our website, www.newarkmuseumart.org, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Again, I'm Darryl Dwayne. Thank our guest again, and happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Thank you.
Click the link. Click the link.